You believe you are free. That is your first and greatest illusion. You decorate your captivity with comfort. You crown your slavery with smiles. You parade through life wrapped in the silks of success, blind to the rusted chains clinking at your ankles. But make no mistake, you are bound, tethered to this world like a man trying to outrun a storm while dragging a coffin behind him. And worse, you love the weight. You whisper to yourself that you are content, that your life is full. But what is it full of? Trinkets, screens, status, food for the stomach, and famine for the soul. You fill your calendar with everything except the call of God. And then you have the audacity to say you have no time. No time for prayer. No time for scripture. No time for sacrifice. You say life is busy. What you mean is that heaven is not a priority. You sing songs about Christ as deliverer while clinging to the very cages he came to shatter. You speak of eternity, but live for weekends. You say the world is fading, yet you chase it like it's eternal. How long will you keep dancing at the altar of contradiction? Do you not know what has been written? Whoever wishes to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God. Not indifferent, an enemy. That's not poetry. That's policy. That is spiritual law, and it will not be broken on your behalf. No man has ever clung to this world and passed into the next with honor. The devil no longer needs to threaten you with fire. He only needs to offer you comfort. He no longer needs to shout. He only needs to entertain. He does not drag you into hell screaming. He walks you there laughing, sipping convenience and calling it joy. You have grown soft and called it peace. You have grown attached and called it stewardship. You have built palaces out of compromise and called them blessings. You have carved your excuses into the walls of your soul and called them convictions. But the stone tablets of God are not rewritten by the opinions of men. They are eternal, immovable, and final. The church today is filled with men who say, "Thy kingdom come," while building their own. With women who say, "Jesus is Lord," while bending the knee to fashion, social validation, and curated comfort. With entire families who speak of holiness with their lips and of Netflix with their hearts. You are ruled. That is the truth. And the master you obey is the master who owns you. And if Christ is not that master, then everything else is. Detachment is not an option. It is not an advanced course for monks or mystics. It is not a niche practice for the spiritually elite. It is a mandate for survival. A soldier who loves the battlefield's flowers more than he fears the enemy's blade will not live to see the victory. And you, so busy planting gardens in a war zone, are in danger of being cut down with your hands still in the dirt. God is not interested in half-hearted allegiance. He is not flattered by part-time loyalty. He does not share his throne. Detachment is not loss, it is liberation. Detachment is not rejection of joy, it is the discovery of true joy. Detachment is not the absence of love, it is the refusal to worship what cannot save you. You were not made to be weighed down by the world. You were made to walk on water, but you cannot walk while your heart is drowning. Christ calls you to rise, but you cannot rise until you release. You must let go, or you will be dragged. Christ did not come wearing silk. He did not dine with kings. He did not build a home, nor store up silver, nor seek applause. The very author of existence stepped into dust and chose suffering as his inheritance. And you think he did that to make you comfortable? He was born in obscurity, raised in poverty, hunted by tyrants, rejected by his own, betrayed by a friend, and murdered by the hands he came to save. And still, somehow, you believe the goal of Christianity is a peaceful life? Do you not see the madness? He sweat blood. You complain about pressure. He fasted 40 days. You skip prayer because you're tired. He was lashed until the flesh hung from his back. You avoid inconvenience like it's persecution. He bore a cross, and you refuse to carry the weight of your own convictions. You wear the symbol of his execution around your neck and call it jewelry. But when was the last time you carried its meaning in your soul? The cross was not an ornament. It was a declaration, a death sentence, a brutal, unrelenting end to everything soft, selfish, and safe. And yet you chase a Christianity without cost. You want the crown without the thorns. You want the resurrection without the tomb. You want the lion to roar for you while you sleep among the sheep. But Jesus didn't call you to admire him. He called you to follow, not observe, not applaud. Follow through the desert, through rejection, through trial, through the slaughtering of your fleshly will. And if that path does not terrify your comfort, then you are not walking it. The Son of Man had no place to rest his head. But you require padded pews, lattes in the foyer, and sermons that never cut too deep. You want messages that flatter your habits, not crucify them. You want a gospel that serves your schedule. You want a God who stays in his corner while you decorate yours. But there is no version of discipleship where you keep your life and gain Christ. If comfort is your compass, then hell is your destination. Because the cross does not lead to indulgence. It leads to execution. It leads to the death of ego, the death of preference, the death of convenience. And from that death, life is born. Not the imitation life the world sells you. Not the fleeting high of another possession, another promotion, another pat on the back from the dying masses, but real life. Resurrected life. A life unshackled by fear, unruled by opinion, unburdened by earthly tether. You want peace? It is found in the storm, standing beside the one who commands it. You want joy? It is found in the ashes, dancing with the one who rose from them. You want purpose? Then follow the blood-stained footprints that lead away from every throne you've ever built for yourself. He is not calling you to decorate your life with religion. He is calling you to burn it down and build on ashes. He is calling you to step into the fire, not to warm your hands by it, but to be consumed by it, utterly, willingly, joyfully. Because only what dies in that holy furnace was never worth keeping. And everything that survives it is forged into eternity. But you have been taught to tiptoe where God commands you to tread with thunder. You've been told that balance is wisdom, that moderation is holiness. Lies, vile, polished lies. Christ did not die so you could find a middle ground between him and mammon. He did not bleed so you could barter between surrender and self-interest. This is not a negotiation, it is an invasion. The kingdom of heaven does not knock gently. It advances by force. It crashes through your excuses like a hammer to glass. It tears your idols from the altar, smashes your comforts underfoot, and demands everything, not in arrogance, but in love. Because it knows you were not made for anything less. You were not made to sip from broken cisterns while living water waits untouched. You were not made to dine with pigs while the table of the king sits prepared. You were not made to chase applause from the doomed while angels hold their breath to see if you'll finally rise. And yet, what do you choose? You decorate your cages. You polish your chains. You baptize your compromise in spiritual language and call it wisdom. You avoid the cost of holiness like a plague and dress your fear in the robes of discernment. You hoard your time, your energy, your resources, while heaven watches, unimpressed, unmoved, unconvinced. You give Christ the leftovers of your schedule and call it devotion. You give him the spare change of your passion and call it worship. You drop your sins at the altar, but tie strings around them so you can drag them back when no one's looking. And yet you dare to ask why you feel far from God? It is not because he moved. It is because you refuse to. You want the fire of Pentecost, but not the waiting in the upper room. You want the miracles of the apostles, but not their martyrdom. You want to walk on water, but keep one foot on the dock. You say you trust him, but every action screams otherwise. Detachment is not a trimming of fat. It is the severing of limbs. It is Abraham raising the knife over his promised son. It is Peter dropping his nets without knowing what comes next. It is Paul counting all things as loss. Not some things, not most things, all. Because he had seen the worth of Christ and everything else was rubble. And so the question remains, what is still standing on the altar of your heart? Is it the need to be seen? Slay it. Is it the lust for control? Burn it. Is it the obsession with safety, success, reputation, romance, relevance, legacy? Take the axe and cut it to the root. The cross does not accept roommates. The throne of Christ is not a timeshare. Either he is all or he is nothing. The soul does not drift into surrender. It must be dragged, nailed, crucified. And when it rises again, it rises light, free from the weights that once felt like life, but were in truth a living death. You cannot follow Jesus while hugging the world goodbye with a trembling hand. You must walk away and never turn back. Lot's wife looked over her shoulder and became a monument to regret. But those who fix their eyes forward, on the narrow road, on the broken Savior, on the burning horizon, those are the ones who find everything. Not trinkets, not trophies, not temporary treasures stacked on the scaffolding of dust, but everything. The pearl of great price, the treasure hidden in the field, the one thing worth losing all else to gain. And when they find it, they do not hesitate. They sell it all, not because they are ascetics, not because they enjoy suffering, but because their eyes have seen something greater, something heavier with glory, something weightier than gold and older than time, Christ himself. And yet you bargain. You bring a scale to a place where only fire belongs. You weigh your options while the heavens roar, while angels await your surrender, while demons laugh at your delay. You debate what you can keep, how much you can withhold, how far you can follow without actually leaving Egypt. You want to be free while still building bricks for Pharaoh. You want the promised land without the wilderness. You want the glory of Mount Zion without ascending the hill of sacrifice. But Christ does not beckon from the sidelines. He calls from the heights, from Calvary, from a place where self dies screaming and grace is born in its blood. His call is not soft, it is severe. Not cruel, but cutting. Not unkind, but uncompromising. Because it must be. Because only by cutting away the rot can life truly take root. You want him to fix your life. He came to crucify it. You want him to bless your plans. He came to obliterate them. You want him to sprinkle divinity on your designs. But he is not an accessory to your ambitions. He is the beginning and the end, the Alpha and the Omega, the architect, the builder, the very blueprint. He does not co-sign your empire. He replaces it with his own, and that requires detachment. You cannot bring your idols with you into resurrection. They will rot in the grave. And if you try to pull them into glory, they will drag you back into death. You must drop them, not gently, not slowly. Drop them like Joseph dropped his cloak in the hands of temptation. Flee like fire was chasing you, because it is. There is no neutral ground in this war. You are either climbing toward Christ or crawling back to chains. You are either crucifying the flesh or feeding it. You are either loosening your grip on this world or it is tightening its grip on you. Every moment you hesitate, the vines grow thicker. Every compromise you entertain, the hooks dig deeper. And before long, you're not choosing to stay. You're too entangled to leave. What began as affection ends in addiction. What looked like a blessing hardens into a burden. And what once soothed your wounds becomes the snake curled around your soul. Do not be deceived. The enemy does not offer poison in barrels. He offers it in sips. Sweet, subtle, slow. And by the time you realize you are dying, you've long forgotten how it felt to be alive. So rend your garments, rend your comforts, rend your attachments, and cast them like idols broken at the feet of the only one worthy to hold your heart. Because until you do, every prayer you offer is polluted by hesitation. Every act of service is stained by self-interest. Every step forward is anchored by what you refuse to release. And Christ is not fooled. He sees the hands you keep behind your back. He sees the strings tied to your surrender. And still he waits, fierce, unrelenting, not begging, but beckoning with the voice that split tombs and summoned the dead. Follow me, not with your lips, not with your lyrics, not with your carefully staged performances of piety, but with your heart torn from its idols, bled of its comforts, trembling and empty, and finally, ready to be filled. They sit at your table. They share your name. You love them. And that love, if untamed, will be your noose. There is a subtle blasphemy that passes for devotion in Christian homes. It whispers that blood is sacred, that kin is king, that the voice of family should echo louder than the voice of God. And so slowly, without a word spoken aloud, altars are built, not to Baal, not to Mammon, but to mother, to daughter, to husband, to son. And they are called love. But it is not love. It is worship. And Christ will not compete. He said it without apology, without hesitation, without softening the blow. If anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. These are not verses we embroider on pillows. These are verses we bury under sentiment, hoping the words will wilt with time. But they do not. They stand eternal, sharp as ever, a sword drawn across the threshold of every heart that dares to follow him. You think the test will come with some sinister temptation, but often it comes wrapped in the face of the one you love most. A child pleading, a parent pressuring, a spouse resisting. And in that moment, you will choose the eternal or the immediate, the voice of heaven or the voice at your dinner table, the cross or the comfort of avoiding the fracture. Do not misunderstand. The Lord is not cruel. He is not calling for hatred born of spite, but of supremacy. He must be first, always, absolutely. Even when love becomes the bait that lures you from obedience, Abraham knew. The son of promise, the miracle child, the laughter of his old age, bound in cords, laid on wood. Beneath a knife he raised himself. He did not ask Sarah's permission. He did not consult opinion. He obeyed. Because when the voice of God speaks, affection must kneel or be slaughtered. And we are cowards in comparison. We won't risk awkwardness at Christmas, let alone a mountain of sacrifice. We tailor the gospel to family dynamics. We downplay conviction to keep the peace. We stay silent while loved ones walk into hell and call it love. That is not love. That is complicity. That is treason wrapped in affection. You fear losing their approval more than you fear the wrath of God. You fear breaking the bond more than breaking the covenant. And so you hold your tongue, hide your fire, and keep your faith in a sheath, sharp but unused. But what kind of Christ do you claim to serve if he is so fragile he cannot be brought to the table? What kind of Lord do you pretend to follow if he must always take second place to the feelings of those who reject him? This is not a call to coldness. It is a call to clarity. Your love must be real, fierce, honest, pure. And real love speaks the truth, no matter the cost. Real love lays itself down, but never bows to the golden calves of comfort or consensus. Real love puts the eternal before the emotional. Always. And hear this. If your family must walk away from you to stay where they are, let them. If they cannot endure the heat of your devotion, then let your fire burn until it consumes every false peace they cling to. Better a divided house on earth than a united household in hell. The fear of family rejection is the leash by which many are dragged away from the narrow path. But if Christ is not worth losing them for, then he was never truly your Lord. You pray for revival. Revival always begins with division. The sword must come before the harvest. The line must be drawn before the fire falls. So draw it, speak, stand. Refuse to apologize for truth. Refuse to dilute the message to make it more palatable to those who already despise it. Let your life be an altar they cannot approach without trembling. Let your loyalty to Christ cut through the noise like thunder splitting a silent sky. Because in the end, if you lose all else but gain him, you have gained everything. But if you gain all else and lose him, you have nothing. Less than nothing. You have shadows. You have vapor. You have minutes slipping through your fingers while eternity stares, waiting for you to awaken from your delusion. Time is not currency. It is verdict. It tells the truth without permission. It reveals the ruler of your soul, not by what you claim, but by what you spend. Every second you squander is not neutral. It is loyalty. And the God that consumes your hours is the God you serve. You say you're busy, but time is not devoured by duty. It is sacrificed to your attachments. Time bows to your obsession with entertainment, with productivity for productivity's sake, with unholy busyness dressed in spiritual jargon. You fill your calendar with meetings and margins, distractions baptized in utility, and then blame God for feeling distant. You do not lack time, you lack allegiance. The one who detaches sees time as blood, precious, measured, holy. Not because he is anxious, but because he understands. Every moment is a weapon, and the war is now. Every second surrendered to the flesh is a fortress lost to the enemy. Every hour withheld from God is a sermon of rebellion, louder than your loudest hallelujah. Look at your hours. Look at your days. Tell me who they preach to, because your schedule is your scripture. It reveals what you believe is sacred. And if prayer is an afterthought, if the word is buried beneath your scrolling, if silence before God is a luxury instead of your lifeblood, then do not call him Lord. He has your lip, but not your life. The modern man is not consumed by evil. He is eaten alive by distraction. He is nibbled to death by nothingness. And the devil laughs, not with horns and horror, but with a glowing screen, a streaming feed, a treadmill of tasks that lead nowhere. He doesn't need to tempt you with sin when he can drug you with the ordinary. And what does time say of you? Does it declare urgency or indulgence? Does it ring with obedience or avoidance? Is it spent climbing the altar or building your own? You say you are waiting on God, but often it is God who waits on you, waits for your distractions to dull, your appetites to die down, your excuses to expire. He is not silent because he cannot speak. He is silent because you will not listen. The clock is too loud. The noise of your idolatry too thick. There are no neutral seconds. They either draw you nearer to the throne or deeper into the fog. They either chisel your soul into readiness or leave it bloated with delay. And when the trumpet sounds, it will not wait for you to reorganize your priorities. You think obedience is delayed, but delay is disobedience. Every task you push to tomorrow becomes an altar to yourself. Every prompting you ignore becomes a rope around your own neck. Time is not your servant, it is your test. And most are failing while singing. You dream of standing before Christ and hearing, "Well done." But what have you done? What hours have you given? What sacred minutes have you bled from your day like an offering, even when no one was watching? You want eternal reward without temporal responsibility. You want heaven to rejoice over a life you never truly surrendered. But the gates do not swing open for the well-intentioned. They open for the faithful, for the diligent, for the watchful ones who knew the hour was short and lived like every breath was a battle cry. Do you think time will wait for you to get serious? It won't. It will move with the thunder of judgment. It will break across your life like a flood, and everything not anchored to Christ will be swept into the sea of forgotten excuses. So ask yourself, not tomorrow, not in theory, but now. What owns your hours? What governs your waking and watches over your sleep? What sits on the throne of your attention and drinks from the cup of your effort? Because that is your master. And until Christ holds not just your heart, but your time, your worship is fraudulent, a form without force, a light without heat, a song with no substance. You call it worship, but heaven calls it noise. You cry out for purity while drinking poison with your eyes. You ask for closeness with God, but your soul is clothed in the stench of what you refuse to cut off. You say you are fasting from the world, yet your plate is full and your appetite never dies. What kind of fast is it that leaves you bloated? You take a break from media, but crawl back to it like a dog returns to its vomit. You disconnect for a weekend, only to reconnect with twice the hunger. You abstain for show, not for slaughter. You pause indulgence like it's a game to be resumed, not a parasite to be exorcised. Do you think God is mocked by selective holiness? Do you think he smiles upon your choreographed restraint, your curated sacrifices posted with filters and hashtags? This is not a theater. This is a war. And fasting is not about self-help. It is about slaying the self. You do not fast from what you despise. You fast from what you crave. And if your fast costs you nothing, it gains you nothing. If it doesn't tear, it doesn't purge. If it doesn't ache, it doesn't sanctify. Anything less is theater, hollow ritual, a decaffeinated gospel for a church that fears withdrawal more than judgment. You cannot crucify your flesh with padded nails. You cannot detox the world while sipping it like medicine. You cannot expect divine clarity while your ears are filled with static from 10,000 secular prophets screaming through your screens. You binge their songs, their shows, their slogans, and then wonder why your heart is fogged. You feast at the table of Egypt and then stumble into the tabernacle expecting to hear from God. But his voice is not heard over the clutter. His whisper is lost beneath the carnival. He waits for silence, for separation, for surrender. And that cannot be done halfway. The fast God desires is not a pause in behavior. It is a posture of soul, a ripping away of the veil, a severing of every thread that ties you to Babylon. It is not a Sabbath from sin. It is a funeral for the flesh, a holy mutiny against every comfort you once called friend. You cannot sip from the chalice of Christ while licking crumbs from the devil's table. You cannot mix incense with ash and call it worship. You cannot taste the manna of heaven with the world still coating your tongue. Holiness is not a diet, it is a death. And until you die to the desire, you will never be free from its dominion. True fasting empties the temple. It clears the courts. It overturns the tables of every idol and drives out every voice that does not sound like thunder or whisper like grace. It makes room for the presence not by addition, but by annihilation, by purge, not polish. You say you are waiting for God to move, but he is waiting for you to empty the chair. He is waiting for you to turn off the noise, to kill the appetite, to let your stomach growl, your flesh scream, your soul burn for something real again. This world has tricked you. It taught you to fast from sin and feast on stimulation. But that is not sanctification. It is sedation. You are not being cleansed. You are being calmed, rocked to sleep by the lullabies of lukewarm living. Christ did not bleed to lull you. He bled to wake you up. And that waking begins with hunger. Deep, holy, insatiable hunger. Not for more content, more entertainment, more relevance, but for God, for glory, for fire. And that fire does not fall on altars still wet with compromise. It falls on sacrifice, on surrender, on the empty, the broken, the cleansed. So push back the plate, shut off the stream, cut the cord, burn the scrolls, starve the flesh until your spirit remembers what it's like to breathe. And when it does, when the smoke clears, when the silence finally speaks, you will hear not your own echo, but the voice of the one who has waited without anxiety, without apology, without the syrup of modern comfort dripping from his words. And he will not ask how you feel. He will ask if you obeyed. But obedience has become offensive in this age of self-worship. The altar has been replaced by a mirror, the cross replaced by a couch, the gospel gutted, hollowed out, rebranded into a self-care slogan for souls too fragile to carry the weight of truth. You deserve it. Protect your peace. Put yourself first. These are not mantras. They are manacles, velvet ropes wrapped around your spirit, keeping you from ever running toward the holy fire of surrender. And now the church echoes them. Pulpits peddle comfort, sermons send to the self. We have reimagined the Messiah as a therapist with a stethoscope for the soul, not a king with a sword for the heart. He is no longer the Lion of Judah. He is a life coach in sandals. But the real Christ never said, take care of yourself. He said, deny yourself. He didn't offer you a day off. He demanded your death. Because the self is not a sanctuary. It is a tyrant. A cunning, pampered, manipulative thing that will drain your strength, devour your time, and dull your hunger for God, all while calling it balance. The self will whisper, you're doing enough, as you drift into decay. It will crown you king while sharpening the dagger behind your throne. Christ came not to comfort the self, but to crucify it. And the cross is not a wellness routine, it is execution. You don't need more me time. You need more mountaintop time. Not spa days, but prayer nights. Not journaling, but kneeling. Not retreats to pamper the flesh, but advances to kill it. This is not cruelty. This is clarity. Because what you call self-care is often just self-preservation. Your flesh dressing up as wisdom, your comfort posing as discernment. If you love your soul, you will make war on yourself. You will deny its cravings. You will silence its tantrums. You will drag it to the altar day after day until its voice grows faint and its will bends to a higher throne. The one who follows Christ does not ask, what fills my cup, but where is the cup I must drink? He does not guard his energy. He spends it. He pours out, knowing his strength is not stored, it is supplied. And let it be said This is not a call to recklessness. It is a call to reckoning, to recognize that your greatest enemy is not exhaustion, it is exemption. You have exempted yourself from the narrow way. You have excused your indulgence as necessity. But God will not honor a sacrifice that was never laid down. The gospel is not self-preservation. It is self-immolation, a burning of every excuse, every entitlement, every whispered lie that says, you come first. You do not come first. Christ does. And if he is first, then you can be spent, broken, poured out, like Paul, like Peter, like every saint who ever heard, well done. Because well done is not spoken to the well-rested. It is reserved for the faithful. So cast down the mirror, crush the idol of me, tear down the shrine of my needs, my space, my boundaries. Your soul will not thrive on pampering. It will starve on it. You were made for fire, for mission, for holy exhaustion in the service of the King. And when you collapse in his presence, empty, wrung dry, trembling, you will find what no self-care regimen can offer: life, real life, risen life, the kind that doesn't just soothe you but saves you, because he did not rise from the grave to tuck you in. He rose to ignite you, not to warm your preferences but to incinerate your pretense, not to adjust your lifestyle but to resurrect your life. And resurrection demands burial. A burial of every idol, every indulgence, every attachment, dressed in good intentions, but tethered to death. This is not accessory. This is not extra credit. Detachment is not for the mystic, the monk, or the marginally extreme. It is the mark of the saved. To follow Christ is to leave comfort, leave control, leave self, leave the nets in Galilee, the riches of the ruler, the applause of the crowd, the corpse of your former name. The kingdom of God is not built on half measures. It's not entered with carry-ons. It is not inherited by the double-minded. It is seized by those who have nothing left to lose, and yet we try. We try to drag our baggage through a needle's eye. We try to stuff heaven into schedules already full of earth. We try to sprinkle sanctification over lives still married to sin. But Christ did not die so you could decorate your bondage with crosses. He died to shatter it. And if you cling to what he came to kill, you mock the blood that was spilled. Detachment is not a suggestion, it is survival. You cannot tread water in an ocean of idols and expect not to drown. You cannot flirt with the flames and call it worship. You cannot name Christ with your mouth while your hands white-knuckle the very things he demands you burn. This gospel is not safe. It is not sensible. It is not compatible with your dreams of control. It is a war cry, a hammer on stone, a voice that shakes foundations and demands that you come and die. And yes, detachment feels like death. It feels like mourning what once gave you meaning. It feels like letting go while your flesh screams for the familiar. It feels like walking blindfolded into fire, trusting that the flame will not consume but purify, that the hands which take will also heal, that the sword which cuts will also crown. But oh, what comes after? What erupts when the leash is snapped? When the soul finally breathes without the stench of compromise in its lungs? When the need to be liked, understood, admired, entertained, validated, all of it, is thrown like chaff into the wind, and the only thing left standing is Christ. You fear the loss, but what you call loss, heaven calls clearance, a making of room, a holy evacuation of lesser things to prepare the soul for the weight of glory. You think surrender is subtraction, but the cross is not subtraction. It is multiplication through death. It is the breaking of the seed to birth the tree. It is the emptiness of the tomb that becomes the fullness of eternity. And yet you hesitate. You tiptoe at the edge of the altar, calculating the cost. But every second spent measuring is a second spent retreating. There is no bargain, no compromise, no adjusted plan for the hesitant. The invitation is written in blood, and it has one word: come, come and die. Come and lose what never loved you. Come and leave behind what never knew your name. Come and watch the chains fall as you walk, naked, unarmed, unashamed, into a kingdom not made with human hands, but forged in the furnace of divine fire. But come empty, come severed, come detached. The one who turns back even once is not fit for the plow, and the hand that still trembles with nostalgia for Egypt can never carry the weight of Zion's glory. So cut the cord, burn the ships, rend the veil, and step forward with blood on your hands and steel in your spine, knowing the only thing you've truly lost was the lie that you ever needed anything but him. But still, some cling to the myth of moderation, the fiction of neutrality. They imagine there's a middle path, a diplomatic no man's land between heaven and earth, where one can sip from both cups and still arrive holy. A place where the soul may nod to the cross and still bow to the crowd. But that path does not exist. It is a phantom road paved in compromise and ending in silence. Not the silence of peace, but of judgment. There is no neutral in a kingdom at war. The sword of Christ did not come to carve out a middle. It came to divide, to separate light from shadow, spirit from flesh, true from false, fire from fog. And it does not hesitate. It does not negotiate. It does not ask permission before severing every heart that still dreams of duality. He did not say, choose carefully. He said, choose. And he said it knowing that hesitation is already rebellion, that the fence is not a fence, it is a throne, and the devil sits upon it, delighted by your indecision. Neutrality is not caution, it is cowardice. It is spiritual apathy masquerading as wisdom. It is the great delay tactic of the flesh, convincing you that you are not denying Christ, just not deciding. But not deciding is denying, because the throne will not sit empty. If Christ is not seated, something else already is. The indifferent heart is the devil's playground. It does not shout, it shrugs. It does not rebel, it sleeps. And that sleep is more dangerous than open defiance, because it feels like peace. It smells like safety. It looks like control. But it is death draped in tranquility, a noose wrapped in velvet. You cannot delay devotion. The cliff edge of eternity offers no buffer. The chasm does not respect your schedule. You will not have time to become bold when the trumpet sounds. You will not be handed a sword in the final hour if you refuse to pick it up in the quiet ones. The gospel is not patient with passivity. It demands allegiance, not emotion, not moments. Allegiance. Every breath, every glance, every dollar, every word, every heartbeat spent on mission. It does not ask you to drift toward righteousness. It commands you to march, teeth bared, against the tide of a world that hates your king. Make no mistake, the world does hate him, and it will hate you if you belong to him. If you are not hated, it is not because the world has changed. It is because you have conformed. So examine your neutrality. Is your silence in rooms that mock truth truly wisdom, or is it shame? Are your diluted convictions really strategy, or are they surrender? Have you mistaken being liked for being holy? Have you swapped clarity for kindness, courage for compatibility? You are not a diplomat. You are an ambassador. And ambassadors do not bend the king's message. They deliver it, undiluted and unashamed. Even in enemy territory, there is no compromise clause in the covenant. No escape hatch for the socially aware, no loophole for the lukewarm. The line has been drawn in blood, and your foot is already on one side of it. The only question is whether you'll admit it or pretend you haven't yet chosen. But heaven is not confused. Hell is not confused. Only you are. So make war on the grey. Make war on every shade of maybe. Tear the mask from moderation. Shout down the whisper of delay. And in the rubble of all your well-tailored hesitation, build an altar. Because if Christ is truly king, then neutrality is treason. And treason never sleeps alone. It makes its bed with lies. Chief among them, peace at any price. But the peace this age peddles is not peace. It is sedation. It is the quiet lull before slaughter. It is the numbing of the spirit with soft words, ambient noise, and the endless hum of shallow contentment. It is the enemy's whisper in the garden. You will not surely die. And so, you lower your sword. You silence your mouth. You smother your convictions beneath a pillow of counterfeit harmony and call it maturity. Christ did not come to bring that kind of peace. He said it himself, not in a parable, not as metaphor, but with the sharp edge of absolute clarity. Do not think that I came to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. A sword, sharp, divisive, merciless to the middle ground. It severs false unity, splits families, cuts through crowds, and lays bare every alliance not sealed by blood and fire. So why do you fear the division? Why do you tremble at the discomfort? Has the fear of man made you deaf to the word of God? You think your silence is keeping the peace. But silence in the face of deception is not peace. It is permission. It is the nod of cowardice wrapped in the silence of supposed wisdom. And heaven will not applaud it. Angels do not cheer for those who hold their tongue while truth is trampled. False peace is the devil's lullaby. It does not scream. It soothes. It sings to your flesh in the voice of convenience and calls it kindness. It offers you applause for withholding correction. It promises safety if you would only stay quiet, blend in, sit down. And one by one the saints become statues, silent, still, and eventually forgotten. But you were not called to be agreeable. You were called to be anointed. You were not chosen to fit in. You were set apart to stand out, like fire in a dry forest, like thunder in a funeral home, like Christ overturning tables in the very courts of religion. He was not crucified for being inoffensive. He was crucified for confronting the false peace that coated the Pharisees like perfume over decay. He was killed because he cut. And if he lives in you, you must cut too. You must speak when silence is demanded. You must stand when the crowd kneels to Baal. You must tear the veil of false harmony and reveal the division already present between the holy and the profane, the true and the plastic, the righteous and the religious. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of Christ. And where he walks, conflict follows. Not because he is cruel, but because truth always exposes. Light always provokes. And the ones who are truly his do not flee that tension. They carry it like a torch through the halls of a darkened age. You say, but I don't want to offend. Yet the gospel is offensive to pride, to sin, to apathy. It is a sword that slices the soul in two. If your faith has never disrupted the room, it has likely never left your mouth. Do not aim for peace that heaven does not recognize. Do not aim for unity forged in compromise. Aim for truth, raw, radiant, roaring with the weight of a cross that never once apologized for being an instrument of death. False peace seeks quiet. But true peace brings order through war. It topples the thrones of comfort, breaks the back of deception, and rebuilds the ruins with stones of righteousness. So be a warbringer, not of violence, but of veracity, not of wrath, but of reality, not with weapons of steel, but with words sharp enough to shatter illusions and lives bold enough to make cowards flinch. Because in this age of pacified pulpits and domesticated doctrine, what the church needs is not more harmony with hell, but more holy disruption. And that disruption will only come when you are finally willing to stop chasing peace and start becoming the blade, not the sheath, not the cloth draped over it to soften its presence, but the naked, unsheathed, blinding blade of divine confrontation. The gospel is not comfort. It is confrontation. It is not a lullaby sung over your sin. It is a trumpet blast that tears the veil, shatters the idols, and calls you to war. And yet the modern church has made it soft, blunted its edges, sanded its corners, muffled its roar. They have made the lion lie down and purr. They have traded the roar for a whisper, the wait for a wink, the crucified Christ for a consultant with good vibes and positive reinforcement. They say, Jesus is love, and forget that love is not passive, it is piercing. It does not pat your head while you perish. It does not rub your back while you backslide. It takes up the whip, overturns the tables, and commands, go and sin no more. But you do not want a gospel that severs. You want one that soothes. You want Jesus to tuck you in while the house is burning down. You want him to stand by silently while you flirt with the very things that nailed him to the tree. You want him to nod along as you invite your idols to stay a little longer. But the true gospel brings division before it brings deliverance. It divides soul and spirit, joint and marrow. It divides the false self from the new creation. It divides reputation from righteousness. It cuts through your plans, your dreams, your image, your idols, your carefully curated life, and it slays them all. Not because God hates you, but because everything you refuse to crucify will one day crucify you. This is not a suggestion. It is salvation by sword. And when the blade falls, it does not apologize. It does not ask if you're ready. It does not consult your calendar or check if your social circle approves. It falls clean, final, divine, and yet we soften it. We wrap the cross in cushion. We lay sermons with sentiment. We tell people they can add Jesus to their lives like he's a feature, not a king. But Christ does not join your story. He ends it and raises something new from its grave. He does not slide into the passenger seat. He takes the wheel, rips out the map, drives you off every road you built for yourself, and then burns the vehicle so you never go back. The gospel is a sword, and a sword demands blood. Not the blood of goats or bulls, but yours. Your comfort, your ambition, your false humility, your secret sin, your addiction to approval, your love of luxury disguised as God's favor, your silent bitterness camouflaged in politeness, all of it laid bare, offered up, slain without mercy. This is the path. This is the cost. And if your version of Christianity doesn't bleed, it cannot cleanse. If it doesn't offend, it cannot transform. If it doesn't divide you from your sin, it will never unite you with the Savior. You do not need a spiritual blanket. You need the sword that splits the soul wide open and lets the light flood into places you've long kept sealed. You need the cut that leaves you raw, exposed, trembling, but free. Because only what is wounded by truth can be healed by grace. So stop looking for a pillow. The cross has no cushions. There is no padding on the path of the crucified. Only nails, only wood, only a king who leads not from a throne, but from a hill soaked in blood, where he calls to you, not softly, not sweetly, but with fire. Pick up your cross, not your comfort, not your convenience, not your curated identity, your cross, and follow. Follow with your flesh screaming, follow with your pride bleeding, Followeth your dreams dying one by one, and your soul finally coming alive in the shadow of the only shadow that gives light, the shadow of the cross. And yet you hesitate, you weigh, you stall, you negotiate with the altar, you offer Christ installments, but he demands everything in one downpour. He does not deal in delays. He does not barter with tomorrow. He is not moved by your intentions. Only obedience, only surrender, only fire. Renunciation is not a long-term strategy. It is a present tense explosion. It is the holy rage of a soul that finally sees clearly. It is the severing of ties with urgency, with violence, with no thought of return. It is Elisha burning the plow, not storing it for later. It is the merchant selling everything, not debating over percentages. It is Levi leaving the table, not locking the drawer. It is Peter dropping the net, not folding it first. You do not walk away from the world. You run, as if your robes were already aflame, because delay is a lie, a velvet rope leading to a silent slaughter. The longer you linger, the louder the whisper of compromise becomes. You will not grow into courage. You will not evolve into boldness. You will not wake up one day and suddenly have the strength to do what you refuse to do now. The will to renounce does not arrive later. It is either summoned in this breath, or it is suffocated in the next. The devil does not fear your intentions. He fears your movement. He does not tremble at your convictions. He trembles at your yes, your unflinching, unqualified, unapologetic yes. The kind that slams the door shut without reading the fine print. The kind that packs no bags, glances back at nothing, and steps into the unknown with only fire for a map and obedience for a compass. You say you're not ready. No one is. Readiness is the myth of those who love delay more than destiny. The call of Christ has never required readiness. It has always demanded willingness. The Spirit of God does not wait for you to organize your emotions. He moves at once. He speaks now. He commands immediately. And if he has spoken, then every second of hesitation is rebellion draped in the language of contemplation. Renunciation is not the slow erosion of your preferences. It is the obliteration of your right to prefer anything above him. It is not about behavior modification. It is about the execution of every false king that still tries to sit beside the throne of the slain and risen Christ. The rich young ruler walked away sorrowful, not because he was wicked, but because he was delayed. He wanted Jesus and his wealth. He wanted heaven and his comfort. He wanted eternity on sale, but eternity is not on sale. The price is still full, and it will not drop for you. So, make the cut. Burn the idol. Break the bottle. Tear the contract. Renounce it now. That addiction you've managed, that secret you've rationalized, that habit you've almost dealt with, that dream that puts Christ in the passenger seat, that voice you still let speak louder than the word. Kill it. Not tomorrow. Not after your next promotion. Not after the wedding. Not after the kids grow up. Not after the trauma settles. Now. Because if Christ is not worthy of everything now, he's not worthy of anything ever. He did not die for you partially. He did not spill just enough blood to buy your Sundays. He poured himself out to the last drop. And you dare speak of moderation? This is not about your timeline. It's about his command. Renounce it all. Not with apology. Not with trembling fingers. With fire in your lungs and steel in your bones. With eyes fixed on the King and fists unclenched of every excuse, every justification, every whisper of later. Because later is the enemy's lullaby. But now is the war cry of the saints. Now is the hour. Now is the knife. Now is the holy severing that draws the line between the conquered and the conqueror. So choose, not softly, not gradually, but like a soul that finally understands there is no middle, no pause, no neutral, only this moment. And what you do with it will echo in the courts of heaven or the caverns of hell. So rise, renounce, and step into the blaze of the reckoning, because this is what it has always been. Not a suggestion, not a sermon, not a stirring idea, but a summons. The King has called for an answer, not tomorrow, not in concept, but here, now, in full. No middle ground remains. The line has been drawn, not in ink, but in blood. You will not stand in both camps. You will not serve two masters. You will not cling to the cross with one hand and caress your chains with the other. The fire is rising, and it will not spare what is lukewarm. Choose your God, or bury your soul. You think this is dramatic. It is. Eternity is dramatic. Heaven and hell do not deal in shades of grey. They do not accept indecision as innocence. They do not reward intentions. They respond only to allegiance. Total, absolute, undeniable allegiance. And this world, with all its lights, all its comforts, all its temporary crowns, is passing away. The gold will rot. The applause will fade. The flesh will wither. The name you built for yourself will be forgotten in the mouth of dust. But Christ will remain. He will remain. Throned in unapproachable light. Eyes like fire. Voice like many waters. Bearing the scars of a love that demanded everything and gave more. He is not asking for your opinion. He is demanding your life. And if that frightens you, good, it should. Because the cross is terrifying to the one still clinging to self. But to the one who has counted the cost and found him worthy, it is not terror, it is triumph. So let the thunder roll, let the idols fall like broken teeth to the floor. Let the world rage, let your past scream. Let every excuse burn, because when this life is weighed in the scales of eternity, the only question that will matter, the only anthem that will echo is this: did you give him everything, or did you walk away? There is no third option, so this is the hour, not of reflection, not of regret, of response. The time for delay is over. The age of indecision is done. The clock has struck, and the voice of the Lord still roars from the mountain. Choose this day whom you will serve. Choose, and let the dead bury their dead. But you, child of fire, child of blood, child of destiny, you were not made for sleep. You were not made for silence. You were not made to bow to Babylon. You were made to rise. So rise, with ash on your hands and glory in your lungs. Rise, with no plan but obedience, no banner but the cross, no treasure but the Christ. Rise, and let the world burn behind you, because the King is coming. And he will not ask what you claimed. He will ask what you carried.